And she methodically went through everything, and she gave you where, when, how, and why. She also gave you why.
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Who is he? Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And who is he? Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And what he do? And he's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminally Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, board-certified criminal defense lawyer, coming to you with my pearl-handled pistol cufflinks so graciously gifted to me by our content genius, Michael Rivers, who's behind the camera as we speak, making all kinds of faces when I screw up. But I'm not screwing up right now because this episode is brought to you by ContractsCounsel.com. Now, they're teaming up with eSign.com, so it's part of the same team, I guess. And so their ContractsCounsel.com is running into an issue. They've got a lot of clients, but not enough lawyers. And this is an easy way for you to stay at home, get paid to write contracts for clients. But it's just an easy way to make a little extra dough or make a lot of extra dough, depending upon how many you do. But we're looking for a lot of lawyers who want to make a little extra money, who work from home and can write some contracts for clients. We have a lot of clients and a lot of work. So go to ContractsCounsel.com if you're you use it if you're a client too, but if you're a lawyer, and we know you're out there because we have a lot of lawyers that comment and that are fans of the channel. If you're a lawyer, sign up for ContractsCounsel.com. You can make some extra money, do it from home. You can do it in your underwear. You don't have to put a suit on like this. And you don't have to deal with some overbearing judge who is on an ego trip. So ContractsCounsel.com. Sign up for it if you're a lawyer. And we're going to be promoting that over the next couple months. All right, let's get to why we're here. Why are we here? We're here to react to the closing of the Melly case. Now, closing arguments are given by both the state and the defense. The state goes first. Why does the state go first? Because it's their case. Whenever you have the burden of proof, you're the first one to go. But guess what? You also are the last one to go. They have the right of rebuttal. So the state gives their closing argument. The defense gives their closing argument. The state has the option to give rebuttal, and they almost never, lawyers like to talk. So, and, juries can only listen to so much. My closing arguments are almost always a half hour long. I don't plan it that way. I just go through the evidence and I talk about it, and I'm pretty succinct, and they're almost always a half an hour. In this case, the state's argument was an hour and 44 minutes. The defense's was just a little over an hour. There are studies on this stuff that juries can only listen so long. So let's get into this. Let's watch the arguments, and I'll stop it every so often. We're not going to play the whole thing. I'll watch the whole thing, but we'll react. Here we go.
So here's what we start with. Detective Moretti has an investigation. It starts on October 26th of 2018. We have 2 dead bodies that are dropped off at Memorial Miramar.
One of the things you want to do in a closing argument is you tell a story. You remember that in the opening statement, you can't argue. In the opening statement, the evidence is going to show. Now it's the time where the rubber meets the road, and you got to tell a story. And one of the things I like to do, I like to address everybody in the room. Counsel, Your Honor, members of the jury. And she didn't do that, and that's just a stylistic thing.
Christopher Thomas and Anthony Williams. You have Cortland Henry, who's lying about anything and everything. He's lying about the location of where it happened. He's lying about when it happened. He's lying about the Mr. Demons.
All right, now you get into this and doing a PowerPoint. I think too many people rely on too much for PowerPoints. I'm not a big PowerPoint guy, but I am a visual guy. So if you have some compelling video, you play that, and you go through the exhibits if it's called for.
The defendant being in the car at any point that evening totally omits that. We then have the cover-up that begins. So the question is why? Why does there need to be cover-up? Because there was a murder that was committed, ladies and gentlemen, that's why. There were 2 murders that were committed.
Now keep in mind, how many witnesses did the defense call? 1. They just called the buddy. And he put Melly someplace else. Alibi. And if you look at... But what didn't the defense do? The defense challenged it a little bit in cross-examination, but they didn't put any countervailing experts up. They didn't challenge the phone location. They didn't challenge the trajectory of the bullets. They didn't challenge the medical examiner's findings. I mean, through cross-examination they did, but they didn't put on their own witnesses to challenge that.
And so from here, we're going to talk about and explain what we have, right? So Detective Moretti and the Miramar Police Department have to answer 4 questions. Who, what, when, and where. And so for the where...
So what don't they have to answer? Why? Motive is not an element of a crime.
I want to start with, where did the lethal shots come from? And let's start and focus on that part of the investigation. So the where... We looked at Chris Williams. If you remember, Sergeant Williams came in and testified and showed you how Blue Star works, showed you how shooting reconstructions are done with the trajectory rods, just explained how Miramar had made a good attempt, but they lacked training. So he came in and went through and is able to explain, as an expert in shooting reconstruction, what happened in this car. So we're going to start on the trajectory rods. If you recall, on the outside, the most important aspect of the ones on the outside of the car is they show that this was not a drive-by.
That was powerful evidence. That was very, very powerful evidence, because if Bortland's lying about this being a drive-by, there's only one reason to lie, and that's if they were slaughtered on purpose by the people in the car.
That they're coming in at 90 degrees, that there's no keyholing. If you remember, you learned about keyholing. That would be an angle of entry on that. So he then showed you the Blue Star. And if you recall, ladies and gentlemen, this chemical reacts no matter how many years later, no matter what attempt at cleanup is done. The chemical is still going to react to the presence of the blood. So then you have
See, when I give a closing argument, I do not like a whole lot of dead space, unless it's an intended pregnant pause for effect. And I like it to be seamless, boom, boom, boom.
that reaction. And that reaction, ladies and gentlemen, tells you that someone is sitting in this seat. Because, as Detective Williams illustrated, it's where the Blue Star isn't. So where there is no blood. There's no blood where someone's would have been sitting. There's no blood where their legs would have been, and you can see on the V that's indicated on that. And there's no blood on the back of the seat. So, ladies and gentlemen, what does that tell you? The killer was sitting there. And there's no blood because something was blocking it from getting onto that area of the car. So what do we know as well from this car? We know that there was also that this door was closed. How can that be said? Because, ladies and gentlemen, the Blue Star here shows that this door was shut because there was blood on this door handle. You have from this as well the headliner. So the headliner shows directionality. The headliner shows the way Anthony Williams' head was positioned when he was shot.
This evidence is pretty powerful. You know, just the way the blood evidence came in and the way that the headliner is and just the trajectory of things. And then you got the rods. That presentation of the evidence was pretty powerful in terms of where the shooter was sitting.
That's one aspect of it. That DNA that was tested is all Anthony Williams, but we'll get to that. So the DNA, very strong support. 51.2 septillion times more likely to be that of Anthony Williams than any unrelated individual in the world.
Septillion. No, that's a pretty big number. In other words, there's no question that it's almost they can't say it's impossible, but it's virtually impossible for this to be anybody else's DNA.
That was from Kurt Rhodes. If you recall, he was the expert on DNA. He told you and taught you how DNA is done, how everything works. So now, putting those two things together, you can say, and the evidence shows, Anthony Williams, the way his head was in that Jeep, is that he is sitting in this front passenger seat, and as you can see, all the blood is dripping down the back of the seat. That tells you, ladies and gentlemen, and from the angle of entry when we get to the medical examiner's information, that his head was right here.
Keep in mind, there's a lot of forensic evidence, a lot. And the defense really took a gamble on only calling one witness. Because, you've heard the phrase, you only need to convince one person. Well, then you get a hung jury, and then you got to come back and try it again. They have to convince all 12 people that this is either guilty or not guilty, depending upon your perspective. So they kept it simple, and that's a gamble.
So then we have one of the things that Detective Williams relied upon was the shirt of Cortland Henry. If you recall, there is a spot of blood on the front of the shirt. That blood, as Kurt Rhodes then told you, belongs to Anthony Williams. What does that tell you, ladies and gentlemen? That during the course of this shooting, Cortland Henry has his back against the driver's seat and is driving wearing this shirt when the shooting occurs. You know from that he is not the shooter. Why? Because if he was the shooter, the angle to get that wouldn't have the blood on the front of his shirt. It would have it coming across the driver's side and towards the side of his shirt, not the front. So on here you have the blowback coming there, and that's, again, 32.2 septillion times more likely to be the DNA of Anthony Williams. So then we have the back of the shirt. And so if you recall, the blood on the back of the shirt is right here. And that blood, Christopher Thomas, a single source profile. So what does that tell you, ladies and gentlemen? That tells you that Cortland Henry didn't fire the fatal shot for Christopher Thomas. Here's why. That blood is coming from Mr. Thomas when he is shot. The blood's only moving like that, as you heard from Sergeant Williams, when there is a pulse, when there is pressure. Remember the garden hose analogy that he used and talked about? That's when you're getting the blood that's going to be coming out of the body. And on that, so from there, you know, Cortland Henry is ducked over and flinching away from Christopher Thomas. So he cannot get that shot on Christopher Thomas from where he is seated in the driver's seat.
Well, keep in mind that Cortland Henry is going to trial in October, and she just admitted that he did not fire a fatal shot.
Even if he was in the back seat, let's argue that for a second. To get the blood there, he would have to have been completely turned facing backwards to Mr. Thomas and then turned and shot over his shoulder to get blood on the back of his shirt. That's not reasonable inside of a car. What is reasonable is that he's driving, the shot happens to Anthony Williams in the back of the head, blood gets on the front of his shirt. He flinches, comes down, shot happens to Christopher Thomas, blood gets on the back of the shirt.
So he flinches, flinching and not firing a shot is a feather in Borland's cap.
Since they grew up. But look at the stress being placed on this defendant as the only one bringing the money in, as the only person who's paying the bills. Look at the tension on there, right? Look at the...
That's the why. That's the why. They don't have to prove the why, but they seem to think that they have the why.
Issues and concerns with Mr. Williams, Anthony Williams, and the defendant's mother, that they're fighting an argument. The message is on there to that effect. So look at, for premeditation, you can also look at the manner in which the homicide was committed. Anthony Williams was shot in the back of the head. That was planned.
And premeditation, just so you know, can be formed in an instant. So the fact that he decides to shoot somebody in the back of the head that's unarmed, that it could have formed right then and there. It didn't have to happen. That premeditation did not have to form when they were in the studio, or even when they walked out of the studio. It could have formed just in a moment's notice.
When he was sleeping, so that he could not fight back. That was a premeditated, planned killing of Anthony Williams, where there would be an alibi already discussed. So then, Christopher Thomas. Premeditation, as the judge instructed you, does not require days, weeks, months of planning. Premeditation can be formed quickly. Example we used in jury selection. Going to your mom's house on Mother's Day. You forget to bring flowers. You reach down, pull some flowers out of her yard and give her to those. That is premeditation. That is thinking about something, then doing it. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you the murder of Christopher Thomas was premeditated in that as well. Chris Thomas, as you saw with Sergeant Williams and Mr. Howard demonstrating, oh my goodness, what's going on? Mr. Demmons then made the decision at that point he couldn't have a witness. So look at that. Those are all things in which you can get premeditation, how it was committed, the wounds that were inflicted, the back of the head. Going to Facebook. Showing again that the different information that you have before you belongs to this defendant. 772-713-9807. And that Melly, Montana, at iCloud.com is the email. Remember the snapshot? Melly.Montana. These are names that the defendant uses over and over again to talk about and communicate and identify himself. And look, that phone says verified.
Having that phone identified as Melly's phone is really the key, one of the key pieces of evidence in this case.
As belonging to Jamel Demmons. Also remember Facebook.
Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, when you put shit online, it's a permanent record. It just is. So whether it's, going having a beef with somebody, or having a fun time with somebody, or committing a crime online, it comes back to bite you.
As October 26th of 2018, sun's going down, and the defendant's phone also shows him at this location in Courtroom. And he is dancing and singing and performing, wearing the same jacket, an identical jacket to what Chris Thomas was wearing the night before, and showing Mr. Henry wearing the denim jacket, like Mr. Williams was wearing the night before. And so the question was posed about a contractual agreement and losing money to be there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, look at the text messages between Mr. Devins and his mother. Because he wasn't worried a couple of months before about missing a show because he was getting his hair braided and losing $1,000. But then this night, when his friends were killed, he's dancing and partying around and is worried about a contractual agreement.
So that kind of flies in the face of what the defense one and only witness said. If you remember what the defense witness said, it said that Melly was crying when he heard about it, blah, blah, blah. And look at him the next day, just kind of, like it didn't happen.
Just look at those types of information and those types of behavior and how someone is acting. Snapchat. If you recall, this is the argument between Mariah Hamilton and Jamel Demons, Melly Montana. Board, coming everywhere with me, because if them crackers come grab him, it's my fault, you forgot. I keep Portland with, because at the end of the day, he did one of the realest shit in my life. Yeah, he covered up a murder. Did a very terrible job of it, but that's what he did. That's what this is referring to. This is less than 2 weeks after this homicide occurs, and that's what they're talking about.
And was there anybody to testify about anything different about that? No, there wasn't.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have a confession in this case. The defendant, and now look at the time. Remember we talked about the UTC? So subtract 4. So UTC 2,000 hours. You subtract 4, 1,600 hours. You do the conversion. So 4 p.m. 4 p.m. I did that with the smiley face.
If he is really that stupid to put in a text message, I did that, and it was specifically referring to this homicide, this double homicide, and the jury believes that that's what that means, he's done.
And that's what I said in opening. Context is key. The whole floor is coding. Awesome if you work at Google. Terrible at Broward General Hospital. Context is key. So you've learned PZ Gambino, as you heard from Detective Moretti, is potentially facing federal firearms charges, the gun dealer, is told by the defendant, I did that. Shh. And look at the messages between Mr. Demons and Mr. Gambino. PZ Gambino is a blood gang member. Uses all those same information, slang words, changing of the letters that you learned about from Detective Polo. October 26th, he asks and reach out to see how the defendant's doing. And the defendant says, I did that. And to make a spelling that, other times he uses DAT. And gentlemen, you saw the song where he has a song that he's released called THAT in his phone.
What she's referring to there is that the defense made a point of bringing up that you look at all of this other text and he uses dat for that. And so he said there's an inconsistency there. I don't know if that's really that powerful.
So again, Instagram and how these all fit together. 6:58 a.m. Jamie King, RN, the defendant's mother. Are you here? I'm in Miami. I'm by the stadium. I'm a mess. I'm so worried. I'm here. Well, remember those CDRs where you get sent her to voicemail? Ladies and gentlemen, this shows that she's trying to contact her son. He is ignoring her, and so she's reaching out to her son, who responds back with, I love you, Ma. I'm good, Ma. Because he had the phone at that point. So the judge read you the law.
That is powerful because he's responding directly to his mother. So if that's not his phone, who is it?
Anthony Williams is dead, and it was premeditated. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you the evidence very clearly shows the defendant was caused by Jamel Demings. Same as to Christopher Thomas. Talks about premeditation. Principles. So if, ladies and gentlemen, if you believe that Cortland Henry, and Cortland Henry is charged, but that's for another jury on another day. If Cortland Henry assisted and helped and shot.
She's kind of talking about Henry's responsibility, and it's really not part of this case, but it's something that has to be considered down the line. And if there's an acquittal here, that makes that case that much harder. Because you heard her say in her closing argument that, that Portland Henry did not fire any shots. That the fatal shots did not come from Henry at all. So if the principal's acquitted, that makes it that much harder for them to get a murder conviction with Henry. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Two individuals to help out Mr. Demings. Mr. Demings is just as guilty. Because a principal is someone who decides to help before the murder is completed. And you have that with Mr. Henry, and making that drive and going out to the edge of the Everglades. You have that. He is a principal to first-degree murder.
I mean, they were in the middle of fucking nowhere. And that right there, it can be a huge thing about premeditation.
To first-degree murder. Mr. Demings is just as guilty, and so is Mr. Henry. So, in my few remaining moments, I want to briefly touch on the unlucky 13, because I'll give Mr. Adelstein, Mr. Henry. He's charged, right? So, from all those unlucky 13 people that are listed as suspects.
Now, remember in their opening, they talked about this person, this person, this person, this person. And these are people that, one guy admitted that he did it, and he was in jail at the time. When you have these high-profile cases, people come out of the woodwork.
They have one thing in common, and only one thing in common. They made a single online threat. In poor taste? Yes. Any other evidence that ties them to this case? None. No location data. No communication from anyone in that Jeep to say where they were. No DNA of any of those people on that Jeep. No ballistics evidence at their feet where they were sitting in that Jeep. No private confession. Because remember, all of these online threats, they're out there for the public because they're trying to get attention and trying to get some sort of benefit for that for themselves. Distasteful? Yes. A crime? No. There's no drop pins for an emergency pickup from any of those individuals. There's no phone for any of them at any of the scenes in this case. So, motive. We talked long and hard how we don't have to prove motive. Motive, it's intent. Intent is an action of the mind. So I'll give you.
So the reason does she really need this PowerPoint? I mean, what I don't like about those is that they focus on the screen instead of your message. And the defense, or the state has a different job than the defense. They need to go through all the elements. They need to go, show how the evidence in the case stacks up and meets every one of those elements, because that's their burden.
Motives. Anger. Greed. Resentment. Advancement in the gang.
That advancement in the gang is a huge thing because that's part of the death penalty enhancement. So without that, they don't have the death penalty.
heard $16 million was coming into Jameson Francois, and that you saw $15,000, $10,000 payments going to Mr. Demons. Simple math. Splitting something 4 ways or 2 ways with Mr. Henry, who wasn't smart enough to even properly give a statement to keep Mr. Demons away from the car. So we have all these pieces of the puzzle that we have just talked about. And each and every
So this will be a visual. This will be interesting to see how this comes together.
one shows how this case has been brought together, shows the physical evidence. And so, ladies and gentlemen, there's no murder weapon, right? The question that you have to answer, and that you can now answer based on all of this evidence, is that Jamel Demons was sitting in the back seat of that Jeep. And he was the one that fired the fatal shots that killed Christopher Thomas and Anthony Williams. And you know that because even if you choose to disbelieve one part of the evidence, 2 parts of the evidence, you can see what the overall picture is. The overall picture puts Mr. Demons in the back seat of that Jeep. It puts him holding a gun. You don't need a murder weapon to know that he committed these 2 crimes.
So let's critique her a little bit. She's kind of monotone. Kind of hard to listen to her for an hour and 44 minutes, which we didn't do that, but we just took some of the key things out. But what does she have on her side? She's got a lot of evidence on her side. She's got a lot of forensic evidence that was basically unchallenged. So whether it was the DNA or the trajectory of the bullets, and she methodically went through everything, and she gave you where, when, how, and why. She also gave you why. So we put out a poll about 20 minutes ago. We got about 1,500 responses. It's a 71 to 29 for guilty. And I think unfortunately, that's where this is probably going to wind up. So this is just part 1. We're going to do part 2. So stay tuned for part 2. We'll watch the defense closing. And I think you're going to see a much different style. And as you know, last week I was in trial and I was victorious. And my client was looking at a very serious felony case. And the jury came back within about 3 hours and after they got their lunch and acquitted my client. I'm going to read you a letter that my client wrote to me, and this is why I do what I do. I love what I do, and I love this. Today is the first day in almost 3 years that I did not wake up in either a state of near total panic or of hyperanalysis and overthinking. It's both lovely and quite strange. Some days were certainly better than others, but there was always this malevolent presence pressing on my shoulders. Throughout the course of this, especially during the trial, it became apparent that this was more than a job to you. Bruce, early on, you told me and my wife that you consider your clients family, and that because of that mindset and practice, what happens to us greatly affects you personally. Your empathy, humor, and directness blended with your professionalism, experience, and savvy in a way that showed me that you had my back and that we were not alone. It's a terrible thing to have one's life flipped upside down. How much worse would this have been had you not been there for us? For all the losses that we have had to endure, the sleepless nights, the gut-wrenching, knee-in-the-guts bullshit that pressed down on us, much of what sustained us is knowing that we had a kick-ass team on our side who actually cares about us, not only as clients, but as living and breathing people. Money can't buy this. Money can't buy this. This is why I do. You wonder why I do what I do? Because you help somebody protect their life and you get a letter like that. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Make sure you subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, sign up for Patreon. And if you're a lawyer, sign up for contractscouncil.com. Good way for you to make some money. See you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Now, this song is a bit different because instead of a self-snitching video, this is a victimization video. Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Today we are acting to Quando Rondo, end of story. Now this is interesting because it relates to one of our prior King Von videos. And if you recall in one of my reactions, we played the surveillance of the murder of King Von. And so one of the things we'll be doing in this particular episode is we'll analyze the self-defense claim. And so remember, we are here. And just to give you a quick shout out, if you are one of our Patreon members, your request will be honored shortly. So keep an eye out for that. Now, and as a little bit of a tease, we've got a very important trial coming up here in Minneapolis at the beginning of March. Sorry about that. In the beginning of March, the George Floyd trial is going to happen right across the street from my office. This is probably the highest profile trial ever to occur in the state of Minnesota, and it's one of the highest profile cases in the country. And so we're going to do a dissection of what Officer Chauvin did coming up, and we're going to kind of give some commentary about that trial as it happens. So stay tuned for that. And without further ado,
Twitter. Follow us on Twitter.
Okay. Follow us on Twitter, and we're also on Patreon now. We got quite a number of people growing there, and we're really approaching 50,000 subscribers. Let's get this thing up to 10 million. That's our goal. Our goal is to get up to 10 million. So without further ado, Quando Rondo, end of story. This is actually very interesting because it relates to one of the prior songs that we did. Just so we're clear, he's talking about you probably would have left your mans. That ain't 100. In other words, you would have just left your guy there. You would have taken off instead of stay there and fight. This is a beef between two guys where Quando Rondo is being assaulted, or at least he's on the ground, and then his associate comes around and shoots King Von. That's how King Von died. And so he says he's disrespecting him a little bit in that part of the song. Now, this song is a bit different because instead of a self-snitching video, this is a victimization video. In other words, he's saying, if you guys wouldn't have started this, none of this. So, as you can see, he starts talking about self-defense. He should never have put his hands on me. Now, let's talk about self-defense a little bit because there's my understanding of the facts of this, and I know what you guys know pretty much, but whenever you have self-defense is raised where somebody else is the aggressor, but you have to meet force with like force. In other words, you can't use a gun when somebody has a paperclip. You have the right to defend yourself, but in most jurisdictions, unless you have a stand your ground state, most jurisdictions require a duty to retreat. So if you can reasonably retreat, you have to, unless you have a stand your ground doctrine in your state. Talks about blowing their block off and being really aggressive. That would eliminate your right to self-defense, and it kind of goes against the victimization part of it. And in the song Many Men, he talks about being pursued or it has a hit on him. And in the song, he talks about, well, if you're going to, 1 million isn't enough because you should get 8. A different type of song than we've reviewed so far, that we've reacted to. He's really kind of going back and talking about something that happened and how he's the victim, and it was self-defense. But the other thing about self-defense is you can't raise the self-defense if you're the aggressor. You can't raise self-defense if you're using a disproportionate amount of force. But when you do raise self-defense, it's up to the prosecutor to prove that there was no self-defense, that you did not act in. So they have to sort of disprove a negative. So that was Quando Rondo, end of story. This is really not a case of self-defense. It's actually a case of defense of others, and which is the same standard. But in this case, he was coming around if you remember in the surveillance video, he was coming around the corner and from the car that he was in, and Quando Rondo was getting his lunch eaten, for lack of a better word, and that's when he fires. But if there weren't any guns being used against Quando Rondo, it's going to be very difficult to claim self-defense. Now, we've had a couple of comments. I think somebody commented that I was a Fed or something like that. I try to look at this case from both sides. I'm a defense lawyer. That's how I'm trained. And one of the things we have to do as a defense, in any good criminal defense, is look at a set of facts through the eyes of a typical juror that's sitting in the jury box. We have to know the ups and the downs, the good, the bad. We have to know how a case is going to pan out. So when I analyze facts, like in this case or in any of the other videos, I analyze it with kind of like, how would the prosecutor look at this and how do you beat it? And that's kind of what I do. So I really appreciate you guys coming along for this ride. We're really excited about it. We're up to almost 50,000 subscribers. We're on Patreon. Follow us on Twitter, because one of the things I'll be doing on Twitter is giving you kind of a little foreshadowing of what's to come. Additionally, we're going to expand this, I think. If we get enough support, I'd like to maybe do a podcast, have some guests on here, some high-profile guests. And we've already gotten plenty of, and it's all going to be centered around crime or criminal defense, and my practice and the things that I'm an expert at. I'm board-certified criminal defense lawyer Bruce Rivers. Thanks for watching and supporting us, and follow us on Twitter. Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, criminal defense lawyer, board certified, I might add. And what does that mean to be board certified? It means that I have had enough trials. I am certified to the extent that I'm an expert in the area of criminal law, a specialist in the area of criminal law and criminal trial law. So today, and today's episode, like always, is brought to you by eForms.com. That's eForms.com. So if you need a lease, you need a loan agreement, you need a power of attorney, you need any kind of legal form, go to eForms.com so you don't have to hire somebody like me and pay them a lot of money to pay something that you can get for free on eForms.com. I use it myself. So today we are reacting to Quando Rondo. Now, Quando Rondo was in L.A. He was at a gas station and he got shot at, or at least his vehicle that he was in got shot at. 3 people in a white 4-door car came up to the SUV that they were in. So Quando Rondo and his crew were in a black Escalade. They were at a mobile gas station in LA, and some guys came up and fired away. They hit one of the members of his crew, a 23-year-old guy who later died at the hospital. Quando Rondo himself was not hit. Now, if you remember, Quando Rondo was in a fight with King Von back in 2020. And that's when Lil Tim, who's now on the hook for that murder of King Von, got up and started popping. And so we don't know for sure if this is related to that. It very well could be. But we've got a couple video clips we'd like to show you, because this... And I want to show you the window and the devastation that this kind of stuff causes. So let's just kind of watch this news clip. So take a look at that window. I mean, that's the devastation of a bullet. Bullets are indiscriminate, so whoever's in the way is going to get hit.
Fired, a fight taken to the streets, and this chaotic scene, the ending of a shooting that started in Los Angeles, California. Sheriff's deputies pulling out a man.
See, there's Quando Rondo right there, and he sees that they're pulling his body out of the SUV.
who had been shot in an SUV. Savannah rapper Quando Rondo, a passenger in that car, frantic at the sight. It also
I don't care who you are. You see somebody that's close to you get killed right in front of you. It's traumatic. It's absolutely traumatic. And that's what he's going through. You guys got to stop this killing. You just have to stop the killing.
3 people in one car shot at this black Cadillac Escalade. It's unclear if those inside shot back.
Can I get some space, please?
So now it's my understanding that this is not some kind of random event. But regardless, for somebody to do this, there's some premeditation here. This is premeditated murder, if you ask me.
Victim vehicle, they pulled up, they were pumping gas, and it looks like they probably finished pumping gas, and the suspects approached from the alley, got out of the car, and started shooting at those victims.
Police helicopters overhead, so we knew something was up.
People in the neighborhood shocked by the news.
So let's kind of analyze this a little bit. So you've got 3 guys, and it's a hit. I mean, it's either a hit or it's a random thing of violence. But what they were doing was they were definitely trying to kill somebody. Okay, and my guess is that it wasn't a random event. Once they figure out who these people were, they're going to figure out why they were there. And so what are the crimes that we're looking at here? Well, you've got murder and attempted murder, and probably murder 1. And here's the other thing. If I intend to kill you, but I wind up killing somebody else, that intent is transferred to the person that was killed. So even though they may not have intended to kill this other guy in their entourage, the fact that they were trying to kill Quando Rondo, if that's in fact what they were trying to do, that intent can be transferred, and so it becomes murder 1, and so which means there was some premeditation, and it sounds like they were laying in wait for these guys, just waiting for the right time. And what are they doing? They're not at a club. There's not a big fight. Whoever did this cannot claim self-defense because there's no fight going on, and they're just pumping gas, and they basically hit some very vulnerable people. So this is what I've been preaching against on my channel, for our channel, me and Michael. He's our content genius, but you guys really have to stop the killing. But you got to be protective. That's why something like this should not have happened. Because if this is a professional driver, there's no way they should have been stopped at a gas station. Because with Quando Rondo's history and all the people surrounding, this whole King Von thing, no one's going to forget about it, right? I mean, this is very serious, and it's a cycle of violence. If I'm Quando Rondo and I've got a professional driver, that driver's never going to stop at a gas station like this. That's a huge security risk. So let's just talk about the players here for a second. So if you remember, King Von and Quando Rondo got into it, and that's when Lil Tim stepped in and did what he did and killed King Von. And Lil Durk, was associated with King Von, and it's been said, all along, when is Durk going to slide for King Von? First of all, there's got to be an end to it. So, you can't seek revenge. First of all, you can't seek revenge and have it be legally okay. Second of all, you've got a Louisiana faction and the Chicago faction, and so, you've got NBA Youngboy and Lil Durk, and this could be a product of that. We won't know for a while, but I wouldn't be surprised if we find out this is all sparked by this whole thing between Von's crew and NBA Youngboys. These 2 factions, and this is Lil Durk maybe getting revenge. Now, that is total speculation. I don't know if Durk had anything to do with this. This very well could be some random shooting thinking, we'll rob these guys because they're in a nice Escalade. I doubt it, because that's not typically, people don't shoot first and ask questions later. Usually they point the gun and say, give me your shit. So I don't think this was a robbery at all. I think this is more of a revenge type killing. So, guys, there's no reason to slide up on anybody. There's other ways to get justice, and this ain't it. But this is the way of the street, and this is the way things are, and this is the way things are gonna be for a while, unless and until somebody decides to step up and be a fucking leader. And be a leader by being nonviolent. I understand bravado. I understand being a tough guy. I understand guns. I understand, protecting, your dignity and blah, 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 blah. But you got to live to fight another day. You got to create something instead of tearing something down. Build. And that's my advice to all my guys out there. Build instead of tear it down. So this has just been our reaction to the news that Quando Rondo was shot at. One of his associates was killed, a 23-year-old guy who had the rest of his life in front of him and now snuffed out for absolutely no reason. But in all likelihood, probably still an ongoing part of that beef between Fawn Crew and NBA Youngboys factions, those two factions. I'm hoping that things calm down, but all this is going to do is flame things even more. So stay tuned. We'll follow this. We'll follow other things going on in the news. I really appreciate you guys watching. And take my advice, guys. Take my advice. Build, don't tear down. Build. All right? Live to fight another day. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Make sure you go to Shopify. Find us on Shopify. Spread this word. Don't self-snitch. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe, like, follow, Patreon, all of it. We'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another edition of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm a board-certified criminal defense lawyer, real-life criminal defense lawyer, and today we are going to be reacting to rap lyrics that really happened. So we were talking about self-snitching and all that kind of stuff. But here's something different. I also talk about building, right? I talk about building every day, building your life, building your financial future, building relationships, building your education. Well, we're partnered today and sponsored by a company called Skillshare. Skillshare is an online community devoted to creativity. And you can, whether you're a dabbler or a pro, no matter what you are, to the masterclass level, you can sign on to Skillshare. And you can take classes online. And I've even started taking a class with this YouTuber named Marquez Brownlee. And he's giving me some tips and tricks about YouTube and how to kind of enhance my page and my content. And I find it really fascinating. And I encourage you all to log on to Skillshare and see what they have to offer. Enhance your creativity, improve your skills for just about anything you are interested in. And like I've always said, build, 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 and you can build with Skillshare. So the first 1,000 subscribers of my subscribers, you look on the link down below, and you click on that, you'll get a 1-month free trial. It's only eligible to the first 1,000 subscribers on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. So we are lucky to have this relationship with Skillshare, and I encourage you to go do that. And then they have all kinds of classes, that can help you with just about anything. You can take it just for fun, or to improve a skill, or to learn new skills. So give Skillshare a try. Now, one of the things we always try to talk about is stopping the self-snitching, correct? Well, today we're going to react to rap lyrics that actually happen. So let's get into it.
While some just make up stories for the clout, others talk about real-life situations from the streets. Here's a look at a few famous rap lyrics that have actually...
See, aside from what the lyrics say, having these guns in the cash for that matter, because guess who also looks at these things? If the IRS ever comes around and you got mountains and mountains of cash, or you're pounding these bricks of cash together, and all of a sudden you got some issue with the IRS, that's evidence that you had the cash.
It happened. 12 paramedics couldn't save your fucking life, boy.
Remember that? 12 paramedics couldn't save your fucking life, boy? You remember that? I remember that like it's the back of my hand.
Who I smoke, spin the Benz. Young and Ace and his gang of ATK goons shocked the world with the track Who I Smoke, which disrespectfully mentions a few people who they attacked and killed in this deadly gang war. In this bar, Spin the Benz is referring to the murder of a 22-year-old Jacksonville rapper named Rod K. Rod K was a rapper who was associated with Fulio and his KTA gang. He only started rapping a few months ago, but was popping off in Jacksonville with his track Strap Story and Hot Boys. The rapper was shot and killed on November 20th, 2020, outside the Hilltop Village Apartments.
Now, this video makes a really good point about self-snitching, right? And people always comment saying, "Oh, but it's just music. They can't use their words against you." Yes, they can use their words against them. Here's the thing. There's a doctrine called a statement of a party opponent. Okay, so it's the state versus El Rapper, whatever El Rapper's name is. And so Lil Rapper, he says some shit. Everything that he says, as long as it's germane to the case, as long as it's relevant, can come into evidence. So just because it's on a video doesn't mean that it doesn't come in.
Paramedics arrived on the scene around 4:30 p.m. and found 2 victims in a parking lot. Originally, they reported that the injuries were not life-threatening, but Rod would eventually pass away. So this is what Spin the Bends means when he raps 12 paramedics couldn't save your life. Rod K's death came just a day after the murder of another KTA affiliate who went by the name Spaz 2X. On November 19, 2020, police arrived at the Hilltop Village Apartments, the same place Rod K was shot, around 7:45 p.m. and found Spaz dead. So, Fulio and KTA suffered back-to-back losses of 2 prominent members. Hilltop Village is an apartment complex located in the Moncrief neighborhood of Jacksonville, and many KTA-affiliated rappers and shooters live there. Fulio often refers to it as the 6 or 1646 because...
And see, look at that picture right there. I mean, he's got the gun right there. If he's got a record, I mean, that's exactly what happened to NBA Youngboy.
Address. That was also the spot that his younger brother Bibby was killed back in 2019.
And gunfire erupts inside a Northwest Side apartment complex. It leaves this 16-year-old dead. Neighbors say that the shooting sounded like a war zone.
So Rod K was just another casualty in the ongoing war in Jacksonville. He was just starting to get recognized for his music, which likely contributed to his death. Several rumors are going around on the internet about what happened to Rod K. Some say it was the ops even in the score after Rod went looking for Spaz's killer. Others say he was back.
There's a doctrine called Occam's razor. The simplest answer is usually the right answer. And now keep in mind, even though nothing's really happened on it, what do we say? There's over like 50 unsolved homicides in Jacksonville. Well, there's no statute of limitations on homicides. So one of these other little guys get popped for something. They're looking at 10 years plus life or whatever, and all of a sudden they can start spilling the beans.
By his own people. Regardless of who did it, his ops couldn't miss the opportunity to diss the rapper after he passed. Spin the Bands would mock his op on our IG live session by asking the question, "Where is Rod K?" after he passed.
That's a good question right there. Where is Rod K?
That's a good question right there. Where is Rod K?
And then follow up with this savage bar on Who I Smoke. He also referenced the dead rapper on the track Drill Time, where he raps, "I told y'all Rod K was dead before his body had got found." But Rod K wasn't the only Jacksonville rapper who was referencing Who I Smoke. In this next bar, Fast Money Goon raps about a shooting that almost took out the KTA head honcho, Fulio. I was lurking on his page and caught him lacking in Houston. We let off shots, he got shot, and went on live.
See, when you say shit like this, I mean, I think it's not just for the music. I think this is online beefing, and this is one of the ways. What do you do with an op? You shoot an op? Of course you do. But what else you do to an op? You disrespect them and disrespect their crew, disrespect their dead, right? And this is one of the things that they do. But when you do that, you run the risk. What do you run the risk of? Self-snitching.
Money Goon, Who I Smoke. On July 6, 2020, Fulio was shooting a music video in Houston, Texas. As he was leaving the scene, his car was shot up and a bullet grazed his skull. While he was in the hospital, he went on IG Live to diss his ops and let him know that he wasn't fazed.
Bitch shot me but didn't kill me. On Kendrick. You fucking stupid.
He talks about the shooting in an interview and said that it wasn't a big thing and he wasn't concerned about it because you could die anywhere. He wasn't going to give ATK the satisfaction of knowing that he was worried about almost losing his life. In this bar, Fast Money Goon confirms the rumor that they stalked his social media to get the drop on him. They saw that he was filming a video and went all the way to Houston to try and catch him lacking, but barely missed. That's the wild thing about this new generation of trap and drill rappers. Not only are they out here living the life they talk about in their music, they're also constantly showing their location on social media in real time for everyone to see, including the ops.
That is just so ridiculous on a multitude of levels. Number one, showing your location. Number two, self-snitching. Number three, antagonizing your ops. I mean, all the way around, all it does is speak to war and spur war.
Just before the shooting in Houston, Fulio's girlfriend was also shot. She was hit, but survived, and Fulio once again went on live to prove he wasn't scared. It shows how out of control this whole situation is, when even females aren't safe. But when you're really in the streets like that, anyone around you can get hit. When the ops can't find you, they might go after anyone close to you that matters. In this bar, Fast Money Goon is clowning Fulio by saying they're sending shots in real life, while all he does is send disses on social media. But if you've been paying attention to this beef from the start, you know that both sides have been pretty active with the payback. But Jacksonville rappers aren't the only ones to talk about real shootings and murders in their music. This next artist raps about killing a dude in Walmart in front of his daughter, then beating the case in self-defense. My daughter a G, she saw me kill a nigga in front of her before the age of 2. The baby, rockstar. In this bar, the baby is referencing a real-life incident where he shot and killed a man in a Walmart while he was shopping with his 1-year-old daughter. Even though today the baby is one of the biggest hip-hop stars in the world, the rapper grew up in the mean streets of Charlotte and has been involved in many fights and shootings. Early on in his career, the baby chased 6 armed men out of his home after they broke in and tried to steal his TV and other valuables. He ended up shooting one, but they all ran away and never got arrested.
So 5.
See, this type of somebody breaking into your house, generally speaking, first of all, if somebody breaks into your home, there's the doctrine called the castle doctrine. You have the right to stand your ground in your home. You don't have to retreat. There's no duty to retreat. Some states have a duty to retreat. Some states have a stand your ground law. But every state has the castle doctrine, which means once you're in your home, you don't have to retreat. And you can use deadly force if you reasonably believe that a felony is about to be committed in your home. Doesn't mean you should, but you can. And if you shoot somebody in the ass, guess what? They are probably not going to go to the cops, because what the fuck were they doing in the first place? Because then they implicate themselves in a burglary/robbery.
5 or 6 guys ran up in your house.
Probably more than that.
One of them got shot and they all escaped.
Plus, who can forget the time that the baby was being taunted by another rapper in the mall and he ended up fighting him on IG Live. So despite his superstar status, it's well known that the baby does not play around.
Now, we all know DaBaby was recently in the news for some ill-advised comments he made about gays. I can't remember exactly what the comment was, but suffice it to say, he's been losing sponsors kind of left and right, and so he's had to backtrack. You know, when you're that high profile, you sort of have to be careful what you say and how you say it, because because all of a sudden you've got all these sponsors and you're relying on that cash, and they can go away just like that.
Check out our previous videos on rappers ready for ops and crazy rapper fights for more info on these situations. But probably the craziest moment of his career yet was when the baby shot and killed a man in Walmart, then beat the case on self-defense. On November 5th, 2018, the baby was at a Walmart in Huntersville, North Carolina with his daughter and baby mama buying clothes. While shopping, 2 men ran up on him and told the rapper that he needed to check in. One of them was 19-year-old Dominique Craig, who was holding the gun at the time. They tried to get the rapper to come with them outside, but it didn't get that far. Exactly what happened after isn't entirely clear. But at some point, the baby pulled his own gun and fired 2 or 3 shots, hitting Craig in the stomach and killing him. At first, there were rumors going around that the shooting was the result of a brawl between 4 or 5 other people in the store, while others claimed that it was a shootout in the parking lot. So after being released by the police, the rapper went on Instagram to give his side of the story. He claims that he was there with his BM and daughter when the victim ran up on him, so he simply acted in self-defense.
Boy, come out, that footage come out and show y'all how I was in there with my 1-year-old daughter, my 5-year-old little nigga, my baby mama, on some family and he nigga walked up on me, tried me.
Now, if you got a case, potentially, don't know that I would recommend going on Instagram Live and saying what happened. However, if you do that, that can be used in court. But it can also be used in court for your benefit. However, if you have the case, now the prosecution could use it. You could not use it in your case in chief. You couldn't put that forth as evidence unless DaBaby testified. So DaBaby would have to testify. Then he could bring this in as what? A prior consistent statement. And that can be pretty powerful, especially if this statement was given right after his initial, right after the event happened, because it's a present sense impression. This is what just happened to me. And so it's not a statement of a party opponent for his purposes. In other words, he can't offer it in his case in chief. He can only offer it if he testifies. The prosecution could offer it, but why would they offer it? Because they're prosecuting him, and it makes him look innocent. So they would not necessarily put that into evidence. But he could put it in evidence if he testified it, and my guess is he probably testified.
Looked out on my whole family.
He also did another live a few days later where he sent condolences to the family.
R.I.P. me, you know, my heart's still beating, you know, and condolences goes out to the other parties.
And cleared the rumors that he did it all just for album promotion.
I'm out using it to promote my album, mixtape, whatever. Check the dates, check the caption. I was promoting this before the week happened. I was promoting it as I was on the way to the Walmart, you feel me? And I'm gonna keep promoting.
He was in the middle of promoting his album, Blank Black with Stunnerfo Vegas, which had dropped just a few days before the shooting. And many fans thought he was using the media to gain attention for his project. He denied these rumors, but used several clips from the Walmart shooting news coverage in the intro to a music video for a song called No Tears. The baby would end up getting charged for carrying a concealed weapon, but these charges were later dropped. He was eventually cleared of the crime because his lawyers were able to prove he acted in self-defense. After beating the charge, the baby was one of the hottest rappers in 2019. He was already hustling and making moves, but hadn't broken into the mainstream yet. All the attention from the shooting seemed to help his career, as fans would find out he was actually a talented artist on top of being a real street dude. But according to the baby, the real G is his daughter, who witnessed her father pop a dude in Walmart. Luckily,
I don't know that I would really brag about my 2-year-old watching somebody get killed. I just wouldn't even mention it, probably.
She was still too young to know what was really going on, because if she was any older, she'd probably still be traumatized. But if you thought that was crazy, this next artist rapped about how he pulled up on the ops with 3 of his homies, then ended up beating 2 attempted murder charges. Riding 4 deep where they be, in the back seat with a dirty chopper. NBA Youngboy, murder business. NBA Youngboy is one of the biggest artists in the game, and he's also one of the wildest. The rapper has been in and out of the legal system more times than almost any rapper, yet he still manages to keep his position in the game.
Well, this might be a little bit dated because we know where he is now.
In this bar, he's referring to an incident where he and 3 of his NBA goons pulled up on members of TBG who he thought murdered his cousin Boozilla. The beef between NBA and TBG, or Top Boy Gorillas, goes way back. We're talking before the rapper was even famous. When he was in middle school, Youngboy used to be cool with the younger brother of a local Baton Rouge rapper named G Money, who was affiliated with TBG. At first, Youngboy was cool with G Money and also repped TBG, but their relationship would eventually turn sour after G Money slept with Youngboy's sister.
He mad about his sister too, though.
About his sister?
Yeah, I had her a long time ago.
Plus, TBG refused to pay attention to Youngboy and focus on promoting G Money as a star of the group. Check out our video on Baton Rouge's deadly beef for a more in-depth breakdown of this beef. Youngboy also had a cousin who rapped under the name Boozilla. Boozilla was affiliated with another Baton Rouge gang called BBG, which was also at war with TBG.
So you remember what happened with Youngboy? I mean, he got popped for having firearms in his video, and then he got popped in California, and he ditched a gun when he was there. So, and he had a prior record, and you can't own a firearm if you have a prior felony record.
The Youngboy split from TBG, he started hanging with his cousin again and began beefing with his former friend. Boozilla would diss another TBG-affiliated rapper named Deusa and end up dead not long after. Boozilla's death would really cement the hatred in Youngboy's heart for TBG.
See, look at that. So you've got these guys holding guns and just a mountain of a white powdery substance. Who knows what that is? Hopefully it's props.
And his crew was ready for revenge. Youngboy, along with 3 of his homies, NBA Ben 10, NBA Self-Paid, and NBA Joe, went out hunting for ops. This is the moment Youngboy was rapping about when he says, riding 4 deep round where they be. They would pull up into the territory of TBG and let off shots at 2 men standing in the front yard. They would end up missing the men, but somehow NBA Joe got shot in the neck. He was later brought to the hospital and survived. Youngboy was arrested by U.S. Marshals on November 28, 2016, before a concert in Austin, Texas. He was charged with 2 counts of attempted murder and held on a $200,000 bond. He spent the next 8 months in jail fighting the charge and was potentially facing life in prison if convicted. But his lawyers ended up securing him a plea deal that dropped the charges from attempted murder to aggravated assault with the firearm, which carries less of a penalty. He ended up admitting to the shooting in court, and several record label executives would show up to testify on his behalf to say that he had a promising career in the music industry. Thanks to good lawyers and his label connections, Youngboy was given a 10-year suspended sentence and 3 years of probation. This means he won't serve additional time, but if he messes up again and violates probation, a 10-year sentence is automatically triggered.
And look where he is now. He's looking at that probation violation, and he's looking at new charges. And if he's looking at a 924C count, which is a possession of, using a firearm in connection with a criminal act in federal court, that's a consecutive 5 years, unless somebody was hurt, which is, it just escalates from there.
Sentencing, Youngboy apologized to the court for his crimes and vowed to focus on his music career and leave the streets alone. But we all know how that turned out. Youngboy was released in August 2017 on a $50,000 post-conviction bond and soon after dropped the track Untouchable, which became one of his hottest tracks yet. Beating 2 attempted murders only added to the rapper's reputation as one of the wildest artists of the new generation, and his music started to really take off. But all while he was blowing up, the rapper would continue the war with TBG. In September 2017, the month after Youngboy was released, G-Money was shot and killed.
Baton Rouge police are looking into a deadly shooting that claimed the life of a local rapper. Police say someone shot and killed 22-year-old Garrett Burton on Dallas Street around 1:20 last night.
An NBA affiliate named NBA Pap would end up getting charged for the murder, and the beef between TBG and NBA only got worse from there. The two crews continue going after each other with bodies dropping on each side in an ongoing war.
Yeah, and we've talked a little bit about these bodies dropping on both sides, and how it's just an absolute fucking waste. And I'm not criticizing the rap culture. I'm criticizing the violence within it. And too many young, promising young guys are
still continues to
losing
this
their
day.
lives.
The beef got so deadly that in February 2021, the FBI announced that they were launching an official investigation into the NBA game and were focusing on Youngboy as the ringleader. On March 22nd, 2021, he was arrested by federal agents after a long chase where he tried to escape in a vehicle and then on foot. Check out our video on rappers who ran from the cops for more info on this wild arrest. Overall, Youngboy's legal situation isn't looking great. The rapper has faced serious charges in the past and walked away without any serious time, so anything is possible. Hopefully, his lawyers can work their magic and he can plead the charges down so he can just focus on the music. But it seems like the feds are tired of Youngboy and are ready to lock him up for good. If you thought this video was crazy, be sure to check out our channel for more. From rappers ready for ops to crazy rapper fights.
So that was rap lyrics that really happened. Brought to you by Skillshare. And so I really encourage you guys to click on the link on Skillshare so you guys can just take a sample of their classes. If you like it, sign up for more. So this is Bruce Rivers, criminal defense lawyer. The first 1,000 subscribers are eligible for that free month. Just click on the link and there you go. So this has been Bruce Rivers, Criminal Lawyer Reacts, board certified criminal defense lawyer. Spread the word. If you're watching this, you should follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, sign up for Patreon. We're still doing good work there. If you have any questions, you can always DM me. Talk to you next time. During a recent Clubhouse session, WAC 100 accused Shiesty of cooperating with authorities and labeled him a snitch. In fact, he said he has the proffer, which is bullshit, which is a written contract between the defendant and the prosecutor to prove it. Shiesty's lawyer, Cohen, is calling WAC's claim fake news. First of all, how would he get that? So, first of all, there's a proffer letter. And what a proffer letter is, it's an agreement between the prosecutor and the defendant that, okay, anything you say in this proffer session, where you go to the government and you talk, can't be used against you. So you're free to say whatever you want unless you confess to a murder. That would not be protected. There's no way that this WAC 100 would have a copy of that. It's not a file document. It just sits with the defense attorney and with the prosecutor. There's no way he's got a copy of that. Prove it. Let me see it.
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And what he do? And it's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, your very own personal Oh my God, doesn't that sound nice? Just very accommodating, personal, board-certified criminal defense lawyer here to serve your most intellectual and comical needs when it comes to the legal process. Today, we are reacting to a couple updates, a couple of rappers. If you guys are into rap, which I know my white wine drinking friends are rap fans, Pooh Shiesty was just released from prison. We'll talk about that. And Lil Durk. We got some news on Lil Durk. But before we get to these rapper updates, this is brought to you by AskALawyer.com. AskALawyer.com is a very effective way to talk to a living, breathing lawyer for $49. I mean, it's not a bad deal. So if you're being sued, or if you're suing somebody, or if you got somebody coming after you, or whatever your legal needs are, go to AskALawyer.com. They can help you out with the next steps. And if you're doing your own legal research, they've got an AI component. So trained in all the 50 states. So AskALawyer.com. It is a really good outfit. Same people that brought you e-sign and e-forms, both of which I use on a regular basis. And you know my grandma's downstairs. You know she's in the basement. And she gets lonely. And for $49, she has a friend. So she goes to AskALawyer.com whenever she wants to find out if her grandson is actually mistreating her, which she knows she's not. So we'll see you next time here on AskALawyer.com. Anyway, so let's get right into it. So Pooh Shiesty, if you remember, about 3 years ago, we posted this video on Pooh Shiesty. We'll play a little bit of that for you here. He posted some money on Instagram, and that's how he was discovered later, because the bill on the Instagram matched the $40,000, or one of the bills in the $40,000 that was in the parking lot. And if you remember, there was a kind of an exchange, weed for shoes and cash and guns flying all over the place. And he shot some guy in the ass. So you can see this Pooh Shiesty dude, he got 63 months. The government wanted 10 years. Now, there's some things that go on in the federal system. When you have a case that has a hard mandatory minimum sentence, the judges do not have the discretion to go below that threshold unless there is an exception that allows them to do that. One is what they call a 5K, and that's snitching. I don't represent snitches. So the 5K is something I'm familiar with because I've seen other guys do it, but I don't represent snitches. But snitching is one way, cooperating with the government, because you can have a guideline sentence that's below the mandatory minimum. So like I've got a sentence right now where my client's looking at 87 months basically, but she's looking at a hard 120 months, 10-year mandatory minimum. But she qualifies for the other exception, which is the safety valve. And the safety valve is a situation where if it's not a crime of violence, in other words, no guns, you're not a leader or organizer, and you don't have more than a certain number of criminal history points, and then you do have to meet with the government to give them your side of the story and tell them everything you know. But once you do all that, but it doesn't require you to snitch. But once you do that, then you qualify for a reduced sentence. Now, he didn't get that here because it involved a gun. So his real name is Lontrell Williams, and he was just released from federal prison. Now, let's just calculate this here. Oh, shit, where's my... Here, I can do it on this thing. So he got 63 months, right? So you multiply that by 0.85 equals, that's 53 months, minus 6 months for halfway house. That's 47.55 months. But he did 3 years. How did he get 3 years? There's talk of whether or not he was actually a snitch, and I can't say whether he was or not, and I'm not going to sit here and say that he was. But he served 3 years of his 5-year and 3-month sentence. His lawyer is Bradford Cohen, and that's a pretty good deal. Cohen said Pooh Shiesty is ready. Wait until you see his comeback. He will be bigger than ever. I'm always glad to see a client start to climb back up to elite status. Always keep it 100. Wow. Mr. Cohen, you got the street down. That's a good deal for Pooh Shiesty. It really is, because he had to plead to 3 separate events. And let me tell you something. The federal system is not that... They hand out 10-year sentences like candy. So it's not that big a deal for somebody to get a 10-year sentence. So Cohen did a good job here. One of the quotes, he said, the government wanted 10, he got 3. I always think there's a plan for people, and his story isn't over. It's just starting. Oh, it's so motivational, isn't it? You know, one of the things that we as lawyers don't like, contrary to popular belief, is repeat customers. You know, I don't like to see clients that keep getting in trouble over and over and over again. I had one guy, most charismatic guy I've ever seen in my life. Big guy, dreads, arms like nobody's business, and he was charged with murder in the second degree. So we go to trial in St. Paul, Minnesota, Ramsey County, and we win the case. Just before the jury comes back, he leans over and the prosecutor was just a fucking prick. You know, you like prison food, you know, that kind of stuff. And just being a real jerk throughout the entire trial. And he leans over and says to me, this is before the verdict, if it's guilty, I'm jumping over this table and whooping that prosecutor's ass. The jury's just about to fucking come into the courtroom. What the hell am I supposed to do? Well, I figured prosecutor kind of deserves it a little bit. And he'd only get a couple licks before the deputies would grab him. So I didn't say anything. And lucky for that prosecutor, we won. And I don't think he realized how close he was to getting his ass kicked. But that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is he dodges a 25-year sentence, murder sentence, because 306 months is the middle of the road for middle of the guidelines. So it's 25 and a half years. 2 months later, he calls me up and says, what's the penalty for counterfeiting? You motherfucker. You just dodged a bullet. You've got a tattoo of your children, huge arms, you know, on your arm. You should be counting your blessings and bouncing kids off your knee. And then it wasn't long after that his girlfriend, not his wife, he was married, but his girlfriend runs him down in the streets of Milwaukee and was kicking him in the head. You're not going to do that to me, motherfucker? You know, that kind of thing. And killed him. You know, I mean, life choices, right? Well, let's hope Pooh Shiesty makes some other life choices. He's getting out, his lawyer said he's being released on October 6th after a combination of time served and good behavior. So that calculation that I did probably didn't take into account the incarceration he had before he was sentenced. So the 25-year-old had pled guilty to conspiring to possess firearms in furtherance of crimes of violence and drug trafficking. And he took a plea deal to reduce his sentence. And as part of the deal, this is what he had admitted to participating in the conspiracy on 3 occasions, which were outlined in the press release. So the first incident, so he had to plead to 3 incidents. So the first incident, he was in a car in Memphis, and someone else in the vehicle was with him, and he discharged a firearm at a gas station. Guess what? When somebody does something and you're with them and you're kind of acting in concert with them, in for a penny, in for a pound, you are just as guilty as if you pulled that trigger yourself. So now the second one is basically the one that I did the reaction to. Pooh Shiesty and his co-conspirators arrived to acquire marijuana, codeine, and sneakers. And during a meetup, a member of his group pulled out a weapon and assaulted 2 victims. Now here's how they got him on that one. They dropped $40,000 cash. And he was at a nightclub flashing his cash, and the serial numbers fucking matched. And they put he put that on Instagram. I wish some of these guys would call me first. You know, I'll teach you how to conduct yourselves outside of a jail cell. You know, Jesus Christ. And then the last one, the third incident took place on May 20, 2021, when per the release, Pooh Shiesty assaulted a victim with a firearm at a Miami strip club. So you've got these assaults, you got the firearms, you know, you're acting in concert with other people, doing bad shit. You expect to go to prison. I mean, it's just what's going to happen. He got 63 months. And so 63, you do 85% of that, you get 6 months off for halfway house and whatever time you spent. WAC 100 claimed that Pooh Shiesty snitched to get a lighter sentence. I doubt it because it's 63 months. How much time are you going to get off of 63 months? Not that much. The way you can tell if somebody snitched is if there would be, you know, some sealed filings. During a recent clubhouse session, WAC 100 accused Shiesty of cooperating with authorities and labeled him a snitch. In fact, he said he has the proffer, which is bullshit, which is a written contract between the defendant and the prosecutor to prove it. Shiesty's lawyer, Cohen, is calling WAC's claim fake news. First of all, how would he get that? So, first of all, there's a proffer letter, And what a proffer letter is, it's an agreement between the prosecutor and the defendant that, okay, anything you say in this proffer session, where you go to the government and you talk, can't be used against you. So you're free to say whatever you want unless you confess to a murder. That would not be protected. There's no way that this WAC 100 would have a copy of that. It's not a file document. It just sits with the defense attorney and with the prosecutor. There's no way he's got a copy of that. Prove it. Let me see it. So let's hear what his lawyer has to say.
Long story short is, Pooh Shiesty, Lontrell Williams gave up no one. Absolutely no one. We never cooperated with the government whatsoever. The paperwork that he's reading is that our defense was that we blamed the alleged victims, that the victims were trying to hold up and rob Pooh and his crew, and that's why the guns came out. The victim said, I don't have a gun, I never owned a gun, and through our investigation and the evidence, we found not only did he own a gun, he had a firearm box in the trunk.
None of these guys, I guarantee you, are eligible to possess firearms. And 63 months is a good deal. There's no way that WAC 100 has a copy of any kind of proffer agreement. There's just no.
With ammunition in the trunk. Both of these alleged victims were total liars, totally full of shit. And that's why, instead of getting 10 years, the judge gave him under 5 years for a shooting case. Not because of any kind of, he cooperated. He didn't cooperate with shit.
So that's just a brief statement from his lawyer saying that he didn't cooperate. And I believe him, because you're not going to get much time off of 63 months anyway. 63 to what? Half? So you get 32 months? I mean, who would cooperate for that little amount of time? So this is, here we go, flash, and I don't know why guys do this. Okay, that's him at home with some cash. You know who likes to see those videos? The IRS. Here's some more welcome home. Here's some ice. That's some ice. That's from Jewelry Unlimited. I don't know how much that stuff costs, but it's got to be like $100,000 or something like that. It's ridiculous. So now, but here's the thing. He may be out, but he's going to be on supervised release for probably at least 3 years. So, and what does that mean? He's on probation. When you get released from federal prison, you don't just get released and you're done with prison. And they don't have parole. So what they do is they put you on supervised release. So what do you have to do? You have to be on curfew. You have to do your drug tests. You have to check in. You have to remain law-abiding and whatever other conditions that the court might impose. So you're not just walking free. All right, fast forward, Lil Durk, when a Chicago rapper / serial killer. So if you guys remember, King Von was shot and killed, and Lil Durk wanted to get some revenge for that, right? He directed members of his crew to fly from Chicago to LA to ambush Rondo. And we reacted to all this in real time. Instead of killing him, they killed Rondo's cousin, Lil Pub. And then he was arrested on federal murder charges for hire. Here's what happens. When you have a federal crime of violence, you're in custody and you're not getting out until your case is over with. So he was denied bail, and defense filed motions to dismiss the indictment, arguing it fails to give sufficient details to properly prepare his defense, basically who, when, how, and where he allegedly gave orders to kill. So this is what they said in their papers. While the indictment alleges that the co-conspirators carried out various acts at the direction of Mr. Banks, flying to Los Angeles, tracking, stalking, and attempting to kill Quando Rondo by gunfire, the procuring the firearms and equipment used to do so, it fails to give any specifics. And Drew Feinling, really good lawyer, writes, when, where, how, and to whom Mr. Banks give these alleged directions. So basically, how do you fight something that you don't have specifics of, right? And that's one of the issues with indictments. Indictments aren't all that specific most of the time. And that's why you need a bill of particulars. What the indictment fails to tell us are the very things the defense is entitled to know. The operative facts underline the government's theories of Mr. Banks' guilt. He continues, there is no allegation here that Mr. Banks physically participated in the stalking and shooting at issue. A hearing on the motion is currently expected on November 18th. Lil Durk is accused of ordering hits on his fellow O-Block gang members. Kirko reports that now prosecutors are alleging that he put his hits on O-Block members for not retaliating for King Fon's death. I'm finna pipe it up, he allegedly said in one text, per court documents obtained by the outlet. Prosecutors are also preparing to introduce testimony from one witness regarding these allegations. He's been in custody a long fucking time, and it's kind of amazing how long these cases can take. Apparently, Lil Durk was caught with an Apple Watch in prison. How do you get that? How do you get an Apple Watch in prison? So, in late August 2025, BOP officials seized an Apple Watch with a cellular capability from the defendant. The motion reads, even more troubling is Banks' conduct after he was caught. Rather than accept responsibility for his violation, the defendant allegedly obstructed the investigation, attempting to damage or destroy the communications device. This is not the first time that Durk has been accused of breaking communication rules at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Los Angeles, where he was extradited from Florida in last November. Last December, authorities accused Durk of making unregulated three-way calls. So that's what happens when you were locked in a cage and you're not used to taking orders from people. And it doesn't really matter because what are they going to do? Lock him up again? They'll just put him in solitary. So this is part of the transcript. Defendant Banks has also shown a repeated disrespect and willingness to impede the judicial process, despite admonitions from two courts about the phone violations at the Los Angeles Metro Detention Center. Defendant Banks has escalated his defiance of BOP rules that keep witnesses and others safe. In late August 2025, that's just recently, BOP officials seized an Apple Watch by even more. So you've got somebody with Little Durk who's antisocial, who flaunts at the rules, obstructs justice, and his supporters apparently have threatened arson, gun violence against the prosecutor and judge. So this is like serious shit, really serious shit. Supporters of Little Durk have been leaving a string of threatening messages aimed to keep people in the federal murder for hire case. So an FBI report says some of the fans have been threatening harm to the prosecutors and judges. You can get a lot of prison time for that. So some of the threats left on a U.S. magistrate's voicemail, if they get life, I'm going to burn this motherfucker down, referring to the judge as a bitch while warning their threats should not be taken as a game. They also threatened the prosecutor, attorney Ian Yaniello, free Durk or we're going to shoot that motherfucker up. I mean, first of all, when you do this, you want to see motivation? First of all, the FBI is extremely motivated. You know, they're patient as hell. You know, just when you think you got your life back together, all of a sudden your indictment comes. That they're just patient as hell. And when they're threatened, when the prosecutor's threatened, when the judge is threatened, when one of the FBI agents is threatened, they don't take too kindly to it. And the last thing you need is the fucking FBI in your front yard. The prosecutors, after all this, now they're asking for an anonymous jury, which makes sense because a detailed motion was filed in federal court. The government has expressed a concern for the jurors' safety due to numerous factors, including Durk's vast resources and control over the OTF, an organization they say is expansive reach and violent in nature. Of course it is, because it's a fucking gang. And it's RICO. The feds are seeking to have the names, addresses, and places of employment of the jurors remain secret, even to the attorneys trying the case. So the court is addressing this, and this is how they addressed it. As this court has already emphasized, defendant Banks, the leader of OTF, only the family, uses his money, influence, and power to endanger individuals whom he perceives as a threat. The anonymous jury request continues. Oh, this is from the government. Defendant's vast resources, coupled with the expansive reach and violent nature of OTF, further justify additional safeguards to keep the jury from intimidation and harassment. So they've asked. So the government has asked for an anonymous jury. The defense has asked for kind of more. Throw this out because we don't really know what the true allegations are or how he's involved. Just like the head of a typical street gang, defendant Banks exerts considerable influence over his associates while attempting to insulate himself from street-level criminality. What does that sound like? That sounds like the mob. Lil Durk was arrested a year ago, almost exactly a year ago. They've got a pretrial hearing set for January, but he's in federal marshal custody, U.S. custody. He is not doing himself any favors, but I don't think he gives a shit. I think he wants to be as violent and as controlling of because he's looking at life. You know, it won't be long after this January 20th date, or that January 20th is a trial. So there's a pretrial scheduled for January 7th, trial for January 20th. And this is federal court. See you later. You know, they win like 96% of their cases. They don't bring cases that think you're going to lose. And here's the other thing. He uses his own fucking credit card for these guys to go out to LA. It's not going to be that hard to link up what they're trying to link up. Hopefully, he's got excellent defense lawyers. Remember those big stacks of money we saw with Pooh Shiesty? Guess where that's going? If Lil Durk's got some of those stacks, they're going to his lawyer. That Drew Feinling is a good lawyer, but he's not cheap. And good lawyers generally aren't cheap. If you wind up hiring a lawyer and they're really cheap, you should be suspect of that lawyer because they're robbing Peter to pay Paul and just taking whatever they can from you. Anyway, so that's our update on two of the rappers that we have done reactions to in the past. You want to go back and watch the original reaction. That was Michael is the one that filmed those and edited those. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, your board-certified criminal defense lawyer. Make sure you subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, sign up for Patreon. Go to clrbrucerivers.com to get Nick out of his cardboard box. Because that's where all of our merch goes, and that's how he's paid. And we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer.